Hi everyone, I'm Kyle Carlin, and this is my presentation for Module 5 on barriers to using Web 2.0 in schools. I apologize for the background. I'm currently in a motel room because I'm at a training in Derby, and so I'm trying to get this done while the night in between a couple days of training. So I'll just go ahead and get straight into it. So I've really found that the articles and the video gave some really interesting perspectives about the digital divide, how both in rural areas as well as in urban areas there can be some difficulty either in the accessibility of the technology in itself, or even in how the technology can be outpriced for certain individuals in certain areas. Personally, I have seen the digital divide in my interactions with parents, especially through the special ed process. We send home draft IEPs and other documents through email or other digital means. We also will send paper copies, but the sending digital forms sometimes can be easier and faster for parents. But I found that there are a lot of parents who the only regular access to the internet that they have is through their phone or through friends, or even sometimes at work, and so that can create its own barriers in how we communicate with the parents. But then you also have to consider the instructional implications. A lot of our instructional activities and things, everything from spelling city and those things that provide some extra practice, very rarely is there homework that relies on those technologies, that it doesn't go home with the kids. But there are some supplemental activities that students with access to the internet at home have greater access to those supplemental activities, and that just creates more gaps within the learning within our schools. And then, from my perspective, I have had a lot of interaction with technology in my district. We are a one-to-one K-12, or one-to-one district K-12. We do have an instructional tech coach that they've put resources into to be able to teach our staff how to use these technologies to get the biggest bang for their buck in the classroom, how to make sure that it doesn't become disruptive in the classroom and meets the purpose that we need. And then we've also had our administrators and our staff really embrace the integration of tech, which has really helped support that one-to-one initiative, and really has seen some big growth in not only the comfort level of tech use, but also in some of the products that students are able to create, everything from K all the way up through high school. As far as addressing the digital divide, I do feel that it's a solvable problem. Just like all problems, it's going to take quite a bit of energy and focus on this. Because of the infrastructure needs, I do feel like there's going to need to be something done at the state and federal level, either through infrastructure initiatives or through economic initiatives to get more people access to broadband, but also then be able to afford it. We'll have to invest a lot into infrastructure to make sure that all buildings, all schools, and all towns have similar connectivity. Just the way that we focused on electricity and phone lines in years past, we're going to have to move in a similar direction with broadband and other internet technologies. And that's going to take a mindset shift. Right now, I think people see the internet as or they still see it as kind of a luxury, whereas more and more of our world is relying on the internet, and it does create other barriers when you don't have access to that internet. And it's also going to take advocacy in order to solve this, because most of our advocacy is done online now, whether that's emailing our policymakers, online petitions, social media posts, those kind of things. Those that don't have connectivity, they also don't have the same voice in advocacy, and so we have to be those of us who do have connectivity, we have to be that advocate, be that voice for people who, or at least help amplify that voice to be able to address this. The skills that our students need in order to work in these 21st century classrooms, and one, they need to be able to work well with others. They need to be adaptable, have flexible thinking to be able to, so that when they learn about one tech and one purpose for a tech tool, they're able to apply that tech tool in a new way later on. But also then, as the tech changes, they can take what they've learned from the previous technology tools and apply those same what they've learned from those into new settings. This, of course, does take some basic threshold for keyboarding, a basic mastery of primary web apps and digital apps, everything from word processors to navigating email and all of that. And then navigating standard user interfaces. Most of our user interfaces are built upon one another, so when you get used to one, they might make some small changes. We need kids getting familiar with those so that as new UIs come out, they can adapt to that more readily. But the biggest thing I feel like they need is being able to communicate with various tools, knowing what their message is going to be, who do they want to communicate it to, and then which tools will help them do that in the way that they're wanting. Those things, I think, are the biggest. So much of our digital use now is in communicating with others, that collaboration, connecting, advocacy, all of that, and it takes knowing which tool you want to use in order for that to be most effective. As far as the impact of the global economy on my internet use, nearly all online activity that I am involved with involves some multinational organization, so the global economy is very real and impactful in my life. It does allow for instant connection with anywhere on the planet. If I'm tweeting or on Facebook or ordering something on Amazon, it's a global, there's a connection immediately with the other side of the planet that we have to be mindful of. This is, for me, has been really, I've been working on some different logos and other creative works, and I've used Fiverr to collaborate with others to create logos and other things. And those people that I've worked with have been from Malaysia and India, and there were others that I've talked with that are from various other countries, and those connections, that's just becoming a more and more regular occurrence in our world. And then personally for me, with my book, Bug and Boo, the children's book that I wrote, I was part of some promotional things I was writing for various blogs, some tips on social emotional learning and those kind of things. And one of those blogs was rollercoaster.ie, which is based out of Ireland. And I've actually sold several books in Ireland because of those connections there. And so that global economy and my interaction through the internet with that global economy has really impacted me. As far as training goes, I do feel pretty confident with nearly all technology tools. I feel like I can figure them out pretty well. I do want to get more familiar with some of the administrative tools that can help organize information as I'm going through walkthroughs. And I also need to understand more about how to support others with tech, like supporting the teachers that I'll be working with. How do I help them understand, and what skills do I need to help them create to be effective with students? I can't just be thinking about my own learning. I have to be figuring out how do I support others in this process. I do feel that my district is ready for the 21st century. We are a one-to-one district. We are putting in a lot of infrastructure and resources to make sure that our students are able to maximize their use, both in training teachers in how to do that, making sure that our broadband is able to support the high number of devices that we have, but then also putting resources out there to help communicate with parents and community to understand how that tech is helping our students. Advantages of innovation, really, the biggest thing with innovation is recognizing that if you're standing still, then you're moving backwards. The world is constantly changing. If we aren't moving with it, then we're going to be left behind, and our kids will be left behind because they won't have had the same opportunities that others have. This innovation can create better outcomes through more effective practices, and when there's that vision and a commitment from the district and the leadership, it can really energize and engage staff, students, families, and get them moving with more purpose in the same direction. And then innovation, it does sometimes allow big problems to be solved. Those problems that are out there, that were out there 20, 30, 50 years ago that have been solved, that wasn't because people stood still. It was because they were constantly innovating, trying to find new things that were maybe even solving problems that they didn't even know existed yet. And so innovation, I think, is really key in any industry to be able to address those big problems that sometimes can feel unsolvable until all of a sudden there's a paradigm shift that changes that. Disadvantages, though, is that innovation can be overwhelming when there's too much of it at one time. It can be confusing if there's not a vision and a clear and not clear expectations around that innovation. And most frustratingly is it might not work. Some innovation doesn't always go in the right direction. Sometimes it causes problems. It creates it causes negative outcomes when we were expecting positive outcomes. And so that's why we have to constantly be making sure that we're making decisions based on research and solid data, and that we're actually addressing a problem. The problem we're addressing is actually a problem, and ultimately, if innovation is done poorly, it doesn't have that vision, it doesn't have a clear purpose, it can create dissension among staff, students, and parents as they start to kind of rebel against this innovation that they see as not a positive thing for their school. And then the last slide on cyberbullying. I've not directly dealt with cyberbullying as far as working with kids. I do know that it occurs at every single one of the schools I've worked in varying degrees. The school counselor was the one that generally worked with that at the individual level in my schools. But I have collaborated with others to help kind of come up with solutions long term. I'm currently actually compiling some resources related to bullying and cyberbullying to help address these issues with my own district, but also with some districts in the area that have had some similar concerns. And most of these involve curriculum that would help address this, digital citizenship programs through Google and the FBI and other avenues, but then also some school culture things that help kind of increase the community connection or connectivity, which then reduces the negative interactions that happen in our schools. Ultimately, I found these resources very interesting, and it got me thinking a little bit differently about internet access and how we ensure that the learning we're providing is done in an equitable way. I look forward to seeing what other people have learned and hearing your feedback. Thanks, and have a great day.